Why is the cost of college tuition irrational? Because of recent political developments in the United States, in which some college graduates have gotten loan forgiveness, the price of tuition has been in the news a lot. I keep seeing people talking about how much the cost of college tuition has risen in the past 20 years, the past 40 years. You can even talk about the past 10 years. I've seen that a lot, but I never saw anybody actually address why. Why has the cost of tuition risen so much? I'm seeing all kinds of commentary online, most of it pretty uninformed, talking about why people think college tuition has risen. I've seen everything from blaming college sports teams for taking up so much of the college's money to the idea that it was all a conspiracy by Ronald Reagan. I saw a video like that just this morning. I wanted to know, what is the real story about college tuition? Why is it rising according to actual research experts who have studied these issues and been peer reviewed? So that's what I went on a hunt to find out. What I found blew me away. I never would have guessed the actual reason why college tuition has risen so much. First, let's just acknowledge that college tuition has risen dramatically. For example, looking just between 2001 and 2012, college tuition sticker price in the United States on average rose 46%. Another study looked at a different time period and found that between 1987 and 2007, college costs increased 326%. Just to put that in context, the same study found that during the same period of time, medical costs increased just 186%. Just should be in quotes there because medical costs have increased dramatically faster than inflation. So we're talking about college costs that are absolutely out of control. Researchers have also found that from 1990 to 2020, the cost of textbooks and other course materials that students need in order to complete classes has increased 3 times the rate of inflation during that period of time. So it's not just tuition, it's all the other stuff associated with college as well that is increasing. Another study found that between 1980 and 2005, college tuition alone more than doubled. And during that period of time, colleges became much richer. At this point, college debt is the second biggest liability for most U.S. households, only behind a mortgage. In fact, in 2009, student loan debt surpassed all U.S. credit card debt. In around 2007 to 2008, this issue came to the attention of our politicians in Washington, specifically the Senate, who were looking into why colleges had become so much wealthier and yet tuition continued to increase. I mean, if the colleges are sitting on big piles of cash, why don't they use some of that money to decrease tuition for students? Well, colleges did not, in fact, use their wealth to curb tuition prices, and in this video today, we're going to talk about why they wouldn't have done that. Although this video is not about whether or not college pays off in the end, whether the debt that students accrue is worth it, for their future careers, I do want to address that very quickly. It is true that people with college degrees usually make more money on average than people without college degrees. But I also want to point out that college degrees are paying off less and less and less by the year. If you look at data from a century ago or data from 1950 or 1960 or 1970, you'll see that people with college degrees definitely got their money's worth in terms of how much more successful their lives were and how much more money they made after college. The benefits of a college degree are declining. People, even with bachelor's degrees, are still not finding jobs. For example, one study found that 13% of parking lot attendants hold bachelor's degrees or higher. Some people will argue that colleges with the highest tuition yield graduates better paying jobs after they leave the college. And this is true on the face of it. You can see that students who go to the most expensive colleges usually graduate to have much higher paying jobs. However, there is no evidence at all that the expensive college somehow made the students successful. Instead, more expensive colleges are also more selective, only allowing in the students who already were going to be successful anyway. For example, if you compare students with extremely high GPAs and very high SAT scores who don't go to Harvard with those who do go to Harvard, those who didn't go to Harvard do just as well in life as those who went to Harvard. So Harvard wasn't actually making the students successful. Harvard was selecting the students who already were going to be successful. So there is no evidence at all that a more expensive college actually makes people successful. What we're going to see here is that college costs are irrational. The cost of tuition is irrational if you're thinking of it like a normal marketplace. It just doesn't conform to the rules of a normal marketplace in which people buy and sell products. Imagine that you want to buy a toaster. You can buy that toaster probably at Walmart, probably at Target, maybe at Amazon. So you can shop around and choose the location that gives you the best price on that toaster. If the toaster is $5 cheaper at Walmart than it is at Target, then you can go to Walmart and get that toaster. You may want to get a little bit more expensive toaster if it has features that you want. But if you don't care about those features, maybe you're willing to go with a cheaper toaster. In that sort of marketplace, whoever can offer the highest quality product for the cheapest price wins. They win your business. My assumption going into this video was that colleges would operate similarly. Colleges would be competing with each other to provide customers, the students, the best quality education that they could at the lowest prices that they could. Boy, was I wrong. The college marketplace does not follow the same rules that we expect when we look at the marketplace for toasters or shoes or cars or anything else that we would buy. The college marketplace is topsy-turvy, upside down, irrational by those standards. Now, I'm not trying to claim that everyone who runs colleges and decides tuition prices is actually irrational. What they're doing is rational given the way that the college marketplace behaves. But from the outside, it can look a bit irrational if you're expecting it to behave the way that other goods and services that you might buy behave. So let's talk about all the different ways that college is not at all like a traditional marketplace in which people buy and sell goods and services. One way that college marketplaces are completely different is that the customers, the students who are going to go there and buy an education, the customers aren't just customers. In fact, a college's reputation rests on attracting the highest quality customers or students that they can, and in some cases actually rejecting the students that they view as lower quality candidates. The students, for their part, want the prestige of getting into the quote-unquote better colleges. So the students are competing to get into the college, and the college is competing to get the best students. It's not like a marketplace where people are buying or selling toasters and shoes at all. In some ways, college marketplaces are more like a romantic relationship where people are dating around and trying to find their perfect significant other who will match with them. In other ways, it's more like an employee-employer relationship where people are trying to find matches on the job market. Here's another factor that makes colleges very different than a regular marketplace. There's very little actual competition. Researchers have found that while there are some students who are open to going to any college in the United States, most students want to stay close to home. Younger students who have just graduated high school very often want to stay close to home and live with parents, or stay close to romantic partners, or stay close to friends, or stay in the area that they're comfortable. People who are older, who are going back to college, very often have family that they're responsible for, that they have to stay close to. So most of the time, students aren't actually choosing between all the colleges in the United States. Instead, they're choosing between one, two, three, maybe five colleges in their area. Those are the colleges that are competing with each other. Now, these colleges may not all actually be competing, because some of them might be community colleges and attract a certain kind of student. Then others might be a four-year university that attracts a certain kind of student. So the idea that colleges are actually competing with each other is somewhat true, but not the way that a lot of us imagine that it would be true. If students are the customers of a college, trying to get the best education they can, they have an issue, because students can't actually compare one college's education to another's. You aren't welcome to just walk into any college classroom and sit down and listen for a while and decide if this is the sort of education that you want to have. You don't get to go compare the classroom at Harvard to the classroom at University of Maryland to the classroom at your local community college and see which actually offers the best education. Colleges are officially offering education to their customers, which are their students, and the students are officially buying education, but there's really no way to compare the education quality from one place to another. Sometimes people make the mistaken assumption that college rankings are associated with education, so the colleges that have the highest rankings must offer better education, but that's not true. To my knowledge, there is no ranking system in the United States where somebody sends out people to go sit in dozens of classrooms in each major university and then compare the quality of the education between them. That just doesn't happen. That's not how colleges are ranked. So there's really no way for the customer, the student, to know the quality of the good that they're getting. So in theory, students can choose to go to one college or another based on the quality of the education. In reality, if they don't know that information, if it's opaque to them, how are you supposed to choose? Not only that, college customers, the students, can't really compare pricing either. While you have some general idea whether a college is cheap or mid-range in its price or expensive in its price, and you can get some figures for how much tuition costs each semester, those tuition figures change every year, usually. So if you enroll in a college today that costs a certain amount in tuition, next year it's likely to cost a different amount, but you're already enrolled. Yes, you can transfer, but transfer comes with its own hassles and problems. And that's just the tuition. All the other costs associated with college are completely opaque. Students will enroll in a college having no idea how much their books are going to cost. They don't even know what classes they're going to take 3 years from now, much less what textbooks are going to be required. They have no idea how much the cafeterias are going to cost, or the dorms are going to cost, or the fees that are associated with it. Plus, those costs are changing constantly. In theory, college students should be able to sit down and compare the cost of uh, University of Virginia versus University of Maryland, but it's not that simple. It's not that easy to actually compare those two costs. So if we were to make our analogy again to the person buying the toaster, it would be like if you don't know how much a toaster costs at Walmart versus you don't know how much the toaster costs at Target, and yet you're told to choose between these two. Be a smart consumer. In addition, it's almost impossible for college students to figure out if the cost of college is worth it personally to them. We talked earlier about the fact that on average, people who have college degrees make more money than people without college degrees. So a lot of people just go to college assuming that it may pay off for them, and that's a reasonable assumption to make when you don't have much other information. But the reality is that how much a college degree pays off for you depends on what career you're going to do later. There are some careers in which having a college degree makes a huge difference in your future salary. There are other careers in which having a college degree makes no difference at all. So, in theory, a student who knows exactly what career they're going into after college should be able to sit down, find information about the average salary without a degree versus with a degree, figure out how much difference they can expect, and then maybe compare the cost of a college degree to that difference and decide whether it's worth it for them. But for one thing, hardly any student actually does this. Second, it's a pretty rare college student who knows precisely what they're going to be doing after they leave college. A lot of students have a general idea that maybe they want to go into engineering or maybe they want to go into computer science, but the students who know exactly which job they're going to be in, not a lot of students know that. So it makes sense that students would see college kind of in a general fuzzy way. In the research literature, it's often called the golden ticket to the middle class. There's just kind of this general idea that a college degree can probably pay off, so you're better off going to college, even if in reality you end up in a career that you would have been better off not going to college. There's just kind of this general warm, fuzzy feeling about college. You should go to college. It's a good idea. It'll probably pay off for you. So students end up going to college even if it turns out that their specific situation didn't need a degree in order to be successful. So here's another interesting thing that I found that completely blew my mind about how irrational the cost of college is. Tuition hikes don't drive away potential customers, the students who are going to come to the college. In almost every other marketplace, when prices rise, customers stop buying. When the price of a certain kind of tennis shoe rises, people buy it less. When the cost of a certain vacation rises, people go on that vacation less. But that isn't true of college. Part of this is because people see college as this golden ticket to the middle class. So even people who would really struggle to be able to pay for college will do it. They will beg, borrow, steal, whatever they have to do. They'll eat 2 meals a day or 1 meal a day. We've all heard stories about parents who sacrifice everything to get their kids to college. Why? Well, because there's this perception that college is a golden ticket that gets you into the middle class. So people are willing to do anything, sacrifice just about anything to get into college themselves or get their kids into college. College tuition prices don't decrease the demand. In fact, researchers have found the opposite. Higher tuition increases enrollment, and we'll talk in a minute about why it would do that. This didn't used to be true. 100 years ago, enrollment would rise and fall with college tuition prices. Now, with financial aid programs, supply and demand have become so much more complicated. It's not just that tuition rises and fewer people go to college, or tuition falls and more people go to college. Instead, it's this extremely complicated picture. But another unexpected thing I found was that the more money colleges have, the more they raise prices. In a regular business, an influx of cash would probably do the opposite. If you had an influx of cash in your shoe business, then that would mean that you could, at least in theory, lower the prices of the shoes for the customers so that then you could outcompete somebody else who's trying to sell similar shoes. Now, I know that businesses don't always behave this way, but this is one of the things that businesses will do with influxes of cash. Colleges have no incentive at all to do this. Colleges have zero incentive to lower their tuition rates. And the reason why is because customers, the students and their families, see tuition as a marker of quality and prestige. The higher the tuition is, the more people expect that that is a better education. Like I talked about before, the customers, the students, can't actually go into classrooms and compare the quality of the education. So how are they supposed to decide which colleges have better education and which ones don't? Well, researchers have found that one of the biggest markers of quality that people can see outside of a college is the tuition prices. So people hear that a college is expensive and they automatically assume that the education at that college must be better. If they hear that the tuition is lower, they automatically assume that the education must be worse. Because higher tuition is a mark of prestige for colleges, colleges take basically every opportunity they can to raise tuition because that's how they're going to look more prestigious and that's how they're going to get more students in their doors. It's kind of backward from our example with toaster ovens. The cheaper toaster oven was the one that was more desired, the one that you would go search out and find. You want the best price you can get. With colleges, because tuition is a marker of prestige, it's the opposite. The higher the tuition is, the more people seek out that college, which is why researchers have found that every time colleges have the opportunity to get more money, they immediately respond by raising tuition prices. For example, when students get more in loans, colleges respond by raising the tuition. This is called the Bennett Hypothesis after a researcher named Bennett who discovered that this was true. More student loans cause tuitions to rise. For example, from 2007 to 2009, there were legislative changes that allowed students to get more in student loans. This was intended to help poorer students and lower middle class students be able to afford college more easily. But what ended up happening was colleges raised their tuition rates. In fact, researchers have found about a 60-cent increase in tuition for every extra dollar in subsidized loans. They found about a 20-cent increase in tuition for every dollar in unsubsidized loans. Not looking at loans, but instead looking at endowments. When colleges get big endowments, like $100 million donated to them, they raise tuition. For example, between 1980 and 2005, researchers found that total endowment money of four-year private and not-for-profit colleges increased by 7 and gifts increased by 3. And during that same period of time, tuition fees doubled. So even though wealthy individuals are giving universities and colleges millions of dollars, in some cases hundreds of millions of dollars, in donations, the universities are responding by turning around and charging students even more in tuition. When colleges get more money, they do not respond by decreasing tuition. Why would they? Tuition is a marker of prestige in the college world. Instead, they do things that signal to the students that the college is prestigious. These kinds of signals include things like building new facilities, renovating old facilities, hiring more or more prestigious personnel, and increasing the quality of their services to the students, such as cafeterias or security. They do this because consumers are willing to pay more for what they perceive as a superior product. When the tuition goes up, research has found that enrollments do not decrease much or at all. In fact, there's been some research to suggest that the more tuition goes up, the more enrollments go up. This makes no sense if you think of colleges as businesses that are trying to make a profit. In fact, a lot of colleges are in trouble because they are financially underwater, they aren't solvent, and they aren't making a profit. But it does make sense if you consider that colleges, even ones that are officially for profit, generally are not aiming to create as much profit as possible. Instead, their goal is to create the highest product possible, the most desirable or prestigious institution. Higher tuition colleges attract talented students, which then increases the college's wealth and then increases tuition, which then attracts more talented students. So you can see how tuition just spirals upward and upward and upward. So here's a question. Surely wealthier, higher ranked colleges provide better education, right? Surely those higher ranked colleges are worth it. They provide such a better education. There is no evidence that's true. College ranking increases with spending. It does not increase with teaching. A college's ranking, for example, in US News and World Report or some of the other places that rank colleges, a college's ranking is not a measure of how good the education is. We talked earlier about how tuition prices are used by students as a marker of quality education, but this is a false marker of quality education. In the absence of any real way to check on the quality of the education, tuition prices signal quality. It's a false signal, but it is a signal, and consumers want that more prestigious and quote-unquote better education. In fact, college rankings are not at all tied to the education that a student is going to get at these more prestigious colleges. Instead, they're tied to tuition prices, facilities, and services. Higher ranked colleges spend more per student, although most of that spending is not in teaching. Colleges spend money on all kinds of things besides teaching. For example, the number of administrators per 100 students at leading U.S. universities has increased by almost 40% from 1990 to 2012. In that same time, the researchers and teachers only grew by 20%. So you can see there's been a lot more administrative bloat in colleges and universities since the 1990s, and that's where some of that money goes. Top schools like Yale or MIT spend more per student on administration than other colleges will spend total on the student. So top colleges are very administration heavy, which makes sense since the rankings are often based on how much money colleges spend. Top-ranked schools spend a lot on professional athletic facilities, sports programs, clubs, and tenured professors who, by the way, are usually the professors that teach the fewest number of students. As families assume that tuition prices are a marker of higher quality education, they're willing to take out loans to cope with higher tuition prices, which then creates a larger lending industry, which then allows colleges to raise tuition even more. Families get stuck in this place where they're battling between two things that they want. One is a desire to go to the most prestigious school possible, and the other is to curb debt. But as we talked about before, because colleges often are viewed as this golden ticket to the middle class or even to wealth, most families are willing to take on much more debt than they would for anything else. Researchers have found that because people cannot tell how good the quality of the education will be from the outside of a college until they've already enrolled, and at that point they can't actually compare between colleges very easily. Colleges use all of these outside markers of quality that people can see from the outside, such as the best dining halls, having the best athletic facilities, etc. Students and their families who are touring colleges can see the dorms, the dining halls, the gyms, parks, libraries, etc. So colleges end up spending money there. And we can't forget about sports. Sports is a big draw for a lot of colleges. Not all, but a lot of colleges. Colleges and universities use sports success to increase tuition. Students want to attend schools with good sports teams. The effects are the biggest at public colleges and especially for out-of-state tuition, but the effects happen at private colleges as well. Researchers have found that colleges with better sports teams have increased costs, including not just tuition, but also room, board, and fees. They've also found that football performance increases college costs more than basketball performance. So you can actually mathematically measure out just how much a football team's good performance will increase the cost of that college. So let's summarize here. College costs have risen dramatically and they don't seem to be stopping. College costs seem irrational in that they don't react the same way we would expect costs to react when we're thinking about the realm of like shoes and toasters. Instead, the demand is basically endless, no matter what they charge, because of this idea of college as the golden ticket to the middle class. People are just constantly willing to spend more and more and more. High tuition is a marker, a false marker, but a marker to people on the outside of the education system of the quality of the education. So raising tuition increases, not lowers, demand for a college. The higher the tuition, the higher the demand for that college. Efforts to reduce the burden of college costs on poor and middle class families have mostly backfired. The government has tried giving more loans and grants, but those only increase tuition. Well-meaning millionaires and billionaires give colleges big endowments, but those also only make tuition more expensive. So why is college so expensive? It's an irrational, seemingly endless loop in which higher tuition creates more demand, which creates higher tuition, which creates more demand, on and on and on.